After discovering a mysterious leak in her kitchen, a woman visits the upstairs neighbor she's never seen before. What she finds is a strange apartment filled with rescued foxes, unsettling memories, and whispers that suggest someone, or something, never left. I'm Claire. I'm originally from Idaho, but I've been living in Portland for the past 3 years. After my divorce, I left the small town where everyone knew my family and tried to start my life from scratch. I work in tech support for a large company, and I commute to the office a lot, so I'm rarely home. I live alone in a small 2-story house divided into 4 apartments in one of the quiet areas of Portland, Oregon. Mine is on the first floor. I've never met the neighbors upstairs. The landlord said that the apartment was rented to an elderly woman, Mrs. Ellis, and that she likes the quiet. I've never encountered her. No one has ever visited her. Well, at least in 3 years, I've never seen anyone leaving or entering her apartment. And she herself very rarely went out. Sometimes I thought she was eating. She literally leaves the apartment once a month. She must have a large supply of food. The light was almost out, and it felt like no one lived upstairs. No footsteps, no conversations. Until one interesting evening. I returned from yoga around 8. I immediately noticed water was dripping from the ceiling in the kitchen. It smelled strange. Not damp, but some kind of animal. A wet animal. I called the landlord, but he didn't answer. Then I realized that I needed to go to the neighbors, although I can't stand these showdowns. Well, there was no other way out. I risked freezing and getting sick in my own apartment. The door of Mrs. Ellis's apartment was ajar. I didn't like it, but I knocked anyway. From inside, I heard movement, the creaking of the floor. A few seconds later, she appeared, a woman of about 60 with long gray hair gathered in a bun. She was wearing a dark green cape and some old beads. She looked at me intently, without a smile. Good evening. Sorry to bother you, but you seem to have flooded my apartment from below. She was silent for a few seconds and then suddenly opened the door. Come in. You already felt it anyway. I was taken aback, but stepped inside. The air inside was heavy and damp, as if I had entered a greenhouse, but with a strong smell of damp earth, mold, and something meaty. There were traces of water on the floor. I stepped onto the carpet and realized that it was soaking wet. It squelched under my feet. The walls were covered in strange symbols, as if drawn by dirty fingers. And strange things hung from the ceiling, like dried branches tied with threads and hair. Some looked organic. Where is the leak coming from? I asked, trying not to show my fear. They were playing, the woman said, looking into the apartment. Who? I asked, but there was no answer. I walked further down the corridor. There was an old family portrait on the wall. I stopped. It was her, the same woman, only much younger. Next to her stood a man in a suit, and between them were 2 children. But their faces were smeared. Not with a pencil, but with something that looked like dried mud. An eerie picture. At that moment, my back was already sweating. I realized that the woman was out of her mind, and it was really unclear what to expect from her. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a shadow in the corner. I quickly turned around, because I was already scared half to death. A red fox peeked out from around the corner. A real one. Alive. That's May, the woman said. And Jasper is running around somewhere. They're tame. Former shelter animals. I saved them when they were cubs. I froze. The fox looked, to put it mildly, unfriendly. Moreover, she was so unkempt that it looked like she had just been in a fight with a bear. I think her back paw was completely bitten off. Blood was dripping from it right onto the wet carpet. I noticed that the floor in the hallway was wet, not from the flood, but as if the animals had run across it after coming in from the street. The smell I smelled in my room was exactly the same. They love water, the woman said. Sometimes they run into the garden. It rained yesterday, and they played in the puddles like children. They came back completely wet and disheveled. I was ready to bet that this was a lie. What garden? If any of the neighbors had seen dirty, exhausted foxes here, they would have immediately called the city service. Besides, we don't have a garden, just a couple of flower beds at the entrance to the building. I was about to ask why water was leaking into my kitchen when I suddenly heard a sound. Something like children's laughter. I froze. Is that a TV? The woman didn't answer right away. Then she looked at me with some heaviness in her eyes. I've been alone for a long time. Sometimes it seems like someone else is here. Don't be afraid. The house is old, it has its own life. At that moment, a cockroach ran through Mrs. Ellis's hair. Yes, it was definitely a cockroach, I noticed it. I must say, I felt sick. I couldn't help but look around. There was a baby crib in the corner. Empty, with a perfectly folded blanket. Next to it was an old teddy bear. There was a cockroach crawling on the bear too. I felt uneasy. I had a son, she said, noticing my glance. He died a long time ago. He was only 3. Sometimes I leave toys for him. I felt awkward. I mumbled something like, I'm so sorry. We all cope in our own way, she answered quietly. Here I must say that this apartment looked like a complete unsanitary place. When I looked around, I saw many more cockroaches crawling on the walls, doors, windowsills, and so on. I guess I was so struck by the general atmosphere that I didn't immediately notice these residents. I couldn't help but think that when I got back, I needed to check all the vents and holes so that these cockroaches couldn't get into my apartment. It was really disgusting. I quickly checked that the water was actually running in the bathroom. The tap was open, not fully closed, but as if on purpose. Did she want to turn the apartment into a river? The water slowly flowed along the floor and then mixed with something red and dirty on the floor. A lump came to my throat. For a second, I thought that she had opened the tap on purpose to wash something off the floor. Apparently, this was the cause of the flooding. I had never seen such a dirty apartment. The only more or less clean corner was the one where the baby's crib stood. The rest looked as if it had all been dragged from the garbage dump and not even washed. We agreed that she would wipe everything down and fix the tap. As I was leaving, the fox, Jasper, rushed past me and froze at the threshold. He looked me straight in the eyes. And then I heard another voice. Faint, like a child's whisper. My heart was beating like crazy. I rushed to the exit. The woman did not stop me, she just watched me go. And when I slammed the door and found myself in the hallway, I noticed. On the back of the door there was something scratched with a knife. Down is bad. Up is worse. Now I am sitting in my apartment and wondering if I should call the police in this situation, maybe the city service? Who should even monitor this? The feeling that there was someone in Mrs. Ellis's apartment besides these foxes did not leave me. The woman looked like she had long since gone crazy. You know, the kind of city madwoman who dresses antediluvianly and constantly whispers something under her breath. Her apartment, of course, matched her. And anyway, is it possible to keep a fox in an apartment? Or 2. Maybe I was just scared out of my mind and it doesn't break any rules? No, tortured wounded foxes in an apartment are definitely not normal. Besides, they could have rabies, gangrene, or some other disease, because they are in some kind of terrible unsanitary conditions there. What did I actually see? Some kind of paranormality? Or just an old and strange granny who can't take care of herself? I've been living in this house for 3 years and I couldn't even imagine that this hell could be going on upstairs. The water from my ceiling doesn't stop, but I know one thing. I will never go up to her apartment again. not for any money. My heart is still pounding.